Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to talk Warhammer 40k Black Library, and today we're going to go through my top 10 stories that came out in 2022. Now, there were a ton of great stories that came out for both Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, and indeed the Horus Heresy. We did our Age of Sigmar ones just gone, and now we're going to do the Warhammer 40k ones. We're not going to do Horus Heresy because not as many books come out for that, but with that all said, let's get cracking on and let's take a look at what my top 10 is. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts on what their favourites were this year, what your top 10 were, what your top 3, whatever. What they were, let us know down in the comments below. So let's get cracking on into my list. Coming in at number 10, we have Void King by Mark Collins. I really enjoyed this. I thought there were some interesting parts to the story. I think the characters were really interesting and sort of different. There were really cool twists and turns. I think the setup for this story was really amazing. Maybe my only criticism of this story is I wish maybe it was a little bit longer in particular parts and spread out the story. I think this could have been, a lot longer a story, but it did hit all the right notes. The ending of it was really cool. It does seem like maybe it's leading to something else. There's definitely some more stories to tell with the particular characters in this story, but all in all, a really enjoyable story. Mark Collins is definitely one of my favourite Warhammer 40k authors. I've been really enjoying everything he's been putting out of late. Coming in at number 9, The Triumph of St. Catherine by Danny Ware. Now, I actually really enjoyed this. There were quite a few of these stories that came out this year for both, obviously, the Horus Heresy and Warhammer 40k, and even some for Age of Sigmar as well. I really like these stories where we take a character model, a major player in one of the various armies, like the Triumph of St. Catherine model, and tell a story, give us some information about the background, about the character of that model. The Triumph of St. Catherine was a really interesting story, taking the different members of the Covenant, introducing a new member to their sisterhood that carry the relic of the sarcophagus of St. Catherine, which is really cool. This made for a really interesting story, for them all sort of sharing their own stories and experiences on how they sort of came to be part of this sort of retinue. And I thought this was really fun and interesting. This definitely took the sisters into a different light and gave me a lot of information on what is a fantastic model on the tabletop. Number 8, The Vincular Insurgency Ghost Dossier 1, a Gaunt's Ghost story. This is by Dan Abner, of course, of Gaunt's Ghost fame. Now, Gaunt's Ghost obviously got their amazing new miniatures recently as well, but this was a really fun story. I've read, Gaunt's Ghost and all of that, but this was a nice look back at some of the early days of Gaunt's Ghost, sort of, filling in some gaps of story here and there, and was a really fun story to follow. Gaunt's Ghost and all of that, they're all really interesting characters enough. But the whole plot and storyline of this was really fun to sort of take a look at. I really, really enjoyed this. This is sort of in the early days of the Gaunt Ghosts. But really fun to read. It's Gaunt. It's always going to be good for me. Next, at number 7, The Successors. Now, this isn't a singular story, and it's probably why, even though I enjoyed this a lot, I do rank it so lowly, is because it is a bunch of short stories. It's an anthology put together. There are so many different authors in here, from Graham McNeil, Guy Haley, Aaron Densky-Bowden, and many others I really enjoy. Peter Fehervari, I'm sorry if I've butchered your name there, mate. But this was really fun. I like Space Marines. I like a lot of successor chapters. I like that this really took a look at a lot of interesting successors, like the Flesh Terrors, Crimson Fist, Red Scorpions, even things, some of the more interesting ones like Empress Spears, which I really enjoy. I have an Empress Spears army myself. There was a lot to get excited for in this, and some of these were, starting off brand new, like the Soul Drinkers got brought back in this, or some of these were setting up some of the original stories that we've sort of read, like there was the one about the Carcharodons that set up the Carcharodons book, Silent Hunters, and there were others that were sort of done after, like the story about the Emperor Spears was focused after Spears of the Emperor. This was just really fun and interesting, had a lot of cool parts to play in it, and a lot of fun stories made up this anthology. Number 6, we return to Danny Ware, who has an excellent way of showing off the Sisters of Battle. This was The Rose at War, which followed a selection of stories about a particular Adeptus Sororitas character across various different battlefields. I really enjoyed this. Once again, this, for me, learning about the Sisters of Battle more and finally seeing them more in depth, I think Danny Ware has an amazing job of bringing them to life. This was really, really enjoyable. Once again, I think the fact that this was more a full story rather than just the telling of the characters what put this above something like the Triumph of St. Catherine for me. But this was really, really enjoyable. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, you know, a great look at the Sisters of Battle, which are, you know, finally getting this nice limelight shone upon them. Coming in at number 5, Awakenings by George Mann. Now, this is actually one of the most recent Warhammer 40k stories I've read, but this was really, really fun. I think this had a bit of a slow build up to it, but it really did a good job of showing you what all the characters were about, what all the enemies and sort of all the things that were moving in play, and eventually this ends with an absolutely amazing I guess later 2/3 of the book. Really, really enjoyable. It did such a good job of setting everything up that makes the rest of the story just amazing. There's definitely more to come, I think, from the story here, but this was really, really enjoyable. I like the idea of an Inquisitor. We got to read about an Inquisitor in Terminator armor. We got to read about acolytes and stuff like that, and various different people working for her. Along with, you know, some really cool and interesting enemies and some looks into, you know, different parts of the Imperium we maybe don't get to see all the time. This was a really fun book and the first Warhammer 40k one I've ever read of George Mann, so this was really good. Coming in at number 4, just missing out on my top 3, is Kazakin by Eduardo Albert. Now, this was really enjoyable. I will say that Eduardo Albert has a fantastic job of making his characters Mary Sue's, but still making them incredibly enjoyable to read about. Now, this Kazakin squad, they do all sorts of cool stuff throughout the story, along with the other characters in there, and he brings in some really interesting bits and pieces to his stories as well. But, you know, they never lose, I guess, that sense of coolness about them, or that sense of like something bad can happen to them. You know, you're not always feeling like they're going to get out of every problem they get into, but they definitely are a really enjoyable set of characters. And like I said, he's able to make Mary Sue characters work, which I think is just an exceptional talent. These characters do, you know, a lot more than maybe what Guardsmen should do, but you don't care because they're cool characters and you want them to succeed. And now into my top 3 40k stories for the year. And we're going to start with Helbrecht, Knight of the Throne by Mark Collins. This for me was amazing. I think for a novella, this told such a really strong story. It gave a really good light upon Helbrecht and showed him in his character, gave him also some nice character development, which was really fun to see. You know, these novellas can sometimes be a little bit sort of one-dimensional, or just sort of tell you about the character without showing you the character growing. But I think this one with Helbrecht, it showed him in some growth. It showed him setting a path forward for him in modern times 40k. And I really look forward to hopefully reading more about High Marshal Helbrecht, the Knight of the Throne by Mark Collins, hopefully more in the future, because this story really did make me want to read more. I wish there was another book I could go read after this, learning about what he's sort of doing and how he's sort of going about his stuff in Warhammer 40k. Number 2, The Twice Dead King, Reign by Nate Crowley. Now, this one only came out, well, this one came out very early in the year, in the first few weeks, and it's one of the earliest books in the list, but for me, it just holds its point. This is the second story about Ultix, the amazing Necron Overlord, and his sort of battle with the curse of the Flayed Ones, the curse of Clandagor. But for me, this was just so good. This was a fantastic ending to like the story arc we started in Twice Dead King Ruin. And I really, really enjoy this. I think this was an absolutely exceptional end to the story. I loved Ultix as a character. And, you know, the other parts of him and all those sort of mind bits and all the other characters. Really, this just did a lot for me. Well deserving of its place in second. And coming in at number 1, Outgunned by Denny Flowers. Now, this for me was such an interesting story. First of all, you know, having the story from the point of view of an imperial propagandist, I think was absolutely a really fun and interesting way to sort of tell a story about this cocky Aeronautica Imperialis pilot that was, you know, a major, powerful fighting ace. But this story, I did not expect much when I listened to this story. There wasn't a lot of fanfare about it. There wasn't, yes, you know, the build-up like there was for some of the other stories like High Marshal Helbrecht and all of that. This just sort of came out. But for me, this was, I think, the best story of the entirety of Black Library that I listened to this year, whether over 40k, AOS, or Horus Heresy, or anything, even ones, you know, from years previous. I think this was a really, really good story, and I can't say enough good things about it. If you haven't read or listened to this, go pick up Outgunned. It is such a good story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I look forward to reading more from Denny Flowers, because this completely blew me away. I was not expecting to like this as much as I did. I think everything about it was cool. Well deserving of my number 1 spot, I think. But that is my list. If you have any thoughts on what your list was, what your top book was, what your top 3, top 7, top 52, whatever you want it to be, let us know down in the comments below. And so that is the end of the video. We hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Sinful Gaming, we have a Discord server which is linked down in the video's description. Also, down in the video's description are the best ways to help support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members, or by grabbing some merch from either Ko-fi or Teespring. All of these are the best ways to help support the channel, and it means the world to us that people do choose to help support us. Now, as a special thank you to everyone who supports the channel via Patreon and YouTube members, we'd like to give you all a shout out. So thank you to our Patreons: Christian Weir, Soren, Kenny Lowe, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Q Dynamic, Anthony B, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, Bloobs, Benjamin Swallows, Red Martin, Kevin Bowman, Iron Grinch, and Nuffs. And to our YouTube members: Greenroots Gaming, Ronya Lock Lorick, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Ariana Edwards, Revenar, Pink Nico Fire, Robin Mankiller, Monty's Tabletop Terrain, John Castle, Davis Weir, James South, Dave Crozier, Dylan Areno, and James Tillman. And lastly, a special thank you to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel. You can see here, and indeed pick up the stickers of the amazing artwork, or the amazing artwork on our merch as well if you want to. But thank you once again, everyone, and a special thanks as well to everyone who helps support the channel, and to all those who come and help with the channel, be the people that come and do battle reports, or indeed those that are managing our Discord server. Thank you all once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.